There are days when you feel you're advancing, but not enough. Days when you make effort, but the internal sensation is the same, as if you were walking without arriving anywhere. It's not lack of intention or lack of capacity. It's the silent frustration of repeating cycles, habits, and thoughts that don't allow you to take off. You look at yourself in the mirror and know you could be much more, but something inside you stays trapped in that version you no longer want to keep sustaining. What wears down is not failure. What wears down is a sensation of stagnation. That perception you do but don't change, that you try but don't sustain. And in that ambiguous space between desire and action, your confidence weakens. Your discipline fragments and your advance becomes intermittent. Not because you're weak, but because you haven't yet understood the psychology behind improving each day. Improving is not motivation. It's an internal reconstruction. It's the capacity to confront yourself without destroying yourself, to make small corrections without punishing yourself, to sustain yourself even when emotion asks you to give up. And this is what almost nobody understands. Improving each day doesn't depend on big changes, but on small, constant, and silent decisions that accumulated redefine who you are and who you can become. You're here because a part of you knows you don't want to keep living on autopilot, that you need to recover direction, intention, and presence. You're not looking for a perfect life. You're looking for a life in movement, a life where each day represents a step forward, even if minimal. A life where you no longer sabotage yourself, where you don't negotiate with your excuses, where you don't abandon what you do need to sustain. And before continuing, I want you to do something simple but forceful. Go to the comments and write, "Today I decide to improve." It's not a motivational phrase. It's a declaration of identity. It's the first stone of a version of you that doesn't wait to feel ready to change. It's a reminder that advance doesn't begin when you have discipline. Advance begins when you decide to assume your responsibility. Breathe. This is your starting point. Here begins a version of you that learns, adjusts, corrects, and advances one day at a time. Chapter 1. Improvement begins when you stop justifying your stagnation. There are moments when you tell yourself everything is fine, when in reality, you know it's not. You keep functioning, you keep fulfilling, you keep advancing halfway, but there's a silent sensation you could be moving much faster, with much more intention, with much more clarity. However, something inside you gets used to the comfortable excuse, to the reasonable explanation, to the when I can, to the later, not because you're incapable, but because you learn to justify your stagnation with an ease you don't even notice. Real progress begins when you're brutally honest with yourself. You don't advance because your explanations are stronger than your decisions. The mind always finds a reason to postpone. Always. It can be lack of energy, excess responsibilities, emotional stress, or even an illusion there's still time. But none of those reasons explain why you keep repeating patterns that don't work for you. Justifications are sophisticated. They disguise themselves as logic, but keep you trapped in the same place. If you want to start improving each day, you must accept something fundamental. Change doesn't appear when you feel ready. It appears when you decide you're no longer going to wait for perfect conditions. Most people live waiting for a special impulse to begin, but impulses are unstable. Discipline is born when you choose to advance even on days when you don't want to, on days when motivation doesn't arrive, on days when the easy thing would be give up for a few hours or a few months. This small but firm choice is the seed of a profound transformation. And there's another uncomfortable truth almost nobody mentions. Stagnation is not neutral. It's not a pause period. It's not a truce. Each day you don't advance weakens a little your confidence, your clarity, and your capacity to focus. Inaction erodes self-esteem without you noticing. It makes you doubt yourself. It makes you feel heavy. It makes you lose internal rhythm. That sensation of I'm the same, as always, is more wearing than any failure. Failing hurts, yes, but stagnating empties you. You must also observe your tendency to confuse activity with advance. Sometimes you fill yourself with tasks to feel productive, but you're not progressing in what really matters. You do a lot but don't grow. You're busy but don't evolve. And this is a dangerous trap because it gives you the illusion of progress without giving you its results. Improving each day doesn't consist of doing more, but doing the correct thing. What moves you? What makes you uncomfortable in a healthy way? What forces you to surpass yourself even a little? Your relationship with discomfort is another essential point. You almost always choose to avoid it because your mind seeks efficiency, not evolution. But each time you choose a comfortable, you reinforce the version of you want to leave behind. And each time you choose a correct discomfort, that which demands from you, that challenges you, that stretches you 1 centimeter more, you strengthen the identity you're trying to build. Discomfort is a price, but also the proof of growth. Finally, you need to assume your responsibility without falling into guilt. Blaming yourself only paralyzes you. Responsibility, instead, returns control to you. Saying, "I can do better" is not an attack against yourself. It's a declaration of power. It reminds you you're not trapped, that you can still correct, adjust, improve, that each day that passes continues being an opportunity to move forward, even if movement is small. Improvement doesn't require perfection. It requires decision. This is the beginning of your process, the moment when you stop justifying why you don't advance and start acting from clarity, when you no longer accept the explanations that keep you the same, when you start moving from responsibility and not from impulse. Exactly here is where the version of you that improves each day is born. Chapter 2. You improve when you learn to act, even when your mind asks you to retreat. There are days when your mind seems to be against you, days when you feel you take 1 step forward and 2 back, not because you don't want to improve, but because your emotional state changes quickly, your thoughts contradict themselves, and your energy becomes unstable. It's in those moments when you ask yourself why it seems so difficult to sustain progress. And although it sounds harsh, the truth is simple. Your mind is trained to protect you, not to propel you. Your mind prefers the known, even if the known hurts you. It prefers the predictable, even if it stagnates you. That's why, each time you try to improve, an internal mechanism appears that tells you, "No, now is too much. You won't achieve it. Better tomorrow." It's not lack of capacity. It's a defense system that reacts to any attempt at change. Daily improvement doesn't fail from lack of talent. It fails from lack of mental training. To truly advance, you need to understand the mind is not always a reliable guide. Sometimes it's the barrier. And your growth begins when you learn to act, even when your thoughts are not aligned. When you decide action will not depend on your mood of the moment, but on your commitment to yourself. That's the difference between who improves and who only tries. One of the most common errors is waiting for clarity to act, waiting for motivation to initiate, waiting to feel ready to advance. But clarity appears after, not before. Motivation is born when you see results, not when you imagine them. And the sensation of being ready never arrives by itself. It's built while you advance. Staying waiting to feel prepared is one of the most elegant deceits the mind uses to stop you without you realizing. Another key point is recognizing how the mind exaggerates difficulties. It takes a small step and converts it into a giant challenge. It shows you tiredness before it arrives, failure before trying it, shame before exposing yourself. That bias toward the negative is not a defect. It's an evolutionary mechanism, but if you don't understand it, it governs you. Improving each day implies learning to question those internal distortions and make decisions based on reality, not on fear. You also need to work on your tolerance to frustration. Each time something doesn't go as you wanted, your mind tries to convince you it's not worth it. It tells you you're inconstant, that you're not good at this, that others advance faster. But frustration is not a sign of incapacity. It's a sign you're breaking a pattern. The discomfort you feel when you improve is not an obstacle. It's evidence you're leaving behind an old version of you. The mind resists because you're changing its programming. There's another silent element you have to learn to handle: excessive self-criticism. Many times you don't advance because you're too hard on yourself. You don't allow yourself to fail. You don't allow yourself to go slow. You don't allow yourself to learn. You believe improving means doing it perfect, when in reality improving means doing it constant. Perfection paralyzes you. Constancy transforms you. Stop evaluating yourself and start observing yourself. Stop punishing yourself and start correcting yourself. And finally, there's the most important decision: acting even though your mind doesn't agree. That's where real discipline is born. When you advance with doubts, when you do what corresponds without desire, when you sustain a habit, although your mind pushes you to retreat, that action contrary to impulse is what reprograms your identity. It's what sends an internal message that you are in command, that you're no longer governed by the emotion of the moment, but by the will to become someone better. Daily improvement is not a comfortable process. It's a conscious process in which you learn to distinguish between what you think and what you need to do. And when you understand that, something changes profoundly. You stop waiting for the mind to give you permission to advance. You are the one who starts to guide it. This is the true core of progress. Acting even when a part of you wants to retreat. Not because it's easy, but because you know the life you want to build begins exactly there, in that instant when you decide to advance despite yourself. Chapter 3. You start to improve when you dare to look straight at what you avoid. There are moments when you feel you do everything possible to advance, but you remain trapped in the same sensation of stagnation. You make lists, you organize yourself, you promise yourself this time will be different, and still something inside you doesn't change. Not because you don't want to improve, but because you're trying to build on terrain you haven't cleaned. You cannot advance if you keep avoiding looking at what really needs to be faced. The truth is this: most stagnation is not in what you do, but in what you avoid. You avoid uncomfortable conversations with yourself. You avoid recognizing patterns you know stop you. You avoid accepting some things about you must change, not because they're bad, but because they no longer fit with the person you want to be. And while you keep dodging those internal truths, any attempt at improvement will be superficial, fragile, and temporary. What almost nobody tells you is improving hurts a little, not because the process itself is painful, but because it forces you to dismantle parts of you that have accompanied you for years, habits that made you feel safe, thoughts that justified your limits, stories you repeated to not assume responsibility. Looking straight at what you avoid is an act of honesty that makes uncomfortable, but that discomfort is the real beginning of growth. The first step is recognizing your evasion patterns. Each time you say, "It's not so serious," when it is, you're avoiding. Each time you postpone a decision, knowing not postponing, it would change your life, you're avoiding. Each time you choose to distract yourself to not think, you're avoiding. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about observing yourself with precision. Improvement begins when you can say with honesty, "This hurts me, this scares me, but I need to face it." The second point is understanding clarity is not born from thinking more, but from thinking better. Many believe reflecting nonstop will help them solve their problems, but the only thing they achieve is staying trapped in a mental loop. Clarity arrives when you have the courage to ask yourself what really matters. What am I sustaining that I should no longer sustain? What fear stops me? What truth am I avoiding accepting? What part of me needs to be re-educated? Those questions are uncomfortable, yes, but they're the ones that free you. Another fundamental aspect is learning to differentiate between what you want and what you need. Sometimes you want to rest, but you need discipline. Sometimes you want to distract yourself, but you need order. Sometimes you want to postpone, but you need to act. Internal conflict appears when you follow momentary desire instead of following deep need. And that internal disconnection creates chaos, guilt, and confusion. Improving each day implies aligning your actions with your true needs, not with your immediate impulses. You must also observe how you relate to your errors. If you hide them, they pursue you. If you justify them, they repeat. But if you look at them with honesty, they transform into guide. Errors don't define who you are. They define what you must adjust. They're mirrors, not condemnations. What hurts you most is not making mistakes, but refusing to learn from what your error showed you. Clarity is born when you decide to stop fleeing from your own shadows. And there's something deeper. Many people don't advance because they fear what will appear when they look at themselves without filters. They fear discovering they're conforming, that they've been living below their potential, that they've allowed their fears to make decisions for them. But although truth hurts at first, also frees you. Real improvement doesn't begin when you love yourself. It begins when you understand yourself. The last step is committing to that clarity. Seeing something is not enough. You have to act based on that. Clarity without action becomes frustration. When you discover what you've been avoiding, decide to face it concretely. A pending conversation, a habit you must break, a limit you must sustain, a project you must begin. Even a small movement toward that direction can change the trajectory of your life. Improving each day doesn't consist of doing more. It consists of stopping hiding from yourself. Because when you dare to look at what you avoided, You recover strength. You recover direction. You recover your internal power, and that's when improvement stops feeling forced and starts becoming a natural expression of who you are. Chapter 4. You start to advance when you stop negotiating with yourself. There's a point in your life where you don't fail from lack of capacity, but from excess internal negotiation, that silent dialogue in which you tell yourself, just for today, no. Tomorrow I'll compensate. It's not so serious. I need to rest. Even knowing it's not about rest, but about avoiding the commitment you promised to have with yourself. This negotiation seems harmless, but it's one of the most subtle mechanisms that prevent your progress. When you negotiate with yourself, you lose more than you imagine. You lose direction. You lose rhythm. You lose internal credibility. Each time you say you'll do something and don't do it, a small part of your word weakens. And that weakening, although you don't notice it at first, accumulates. Your mind learns not to believe in you. It learns your decisions are optional. It learns your commitment can be negotiated according to your emotional state. And when your mind stops trusting your word, improvement becomes a heavy, intermittent, and fragile process. What almost nobody understands is discipline is not based on force, but on coherence. You can have difficult days, but if your word sustains, you advance. You can have doubts, tiredness, or fear, but if your internal response is firm, your life keeps taking direction. Discipline is not being perfect. It's being clear. And that clarity is born when you decide your commitment is not negotiated. The first step to break this cycle is detecting the phrases with which you sabotage yourself. They're not big phrases. They're small phrases. 5 more minutes. I'll do it later. Today, nothing happens. Anyway, nobody finds out, but you always find out. And your mind registers each of those micro-betrayals. If you want to recover your internal strength, you need to start treating those small decisions as what they really are, identity signals. Each time you choose to sustain yourself, even in something minimal, you're reinforcing a version of you that improves each day. Another essential point is understanding internal negotiation appears especially in moments where you most need to advance. Your mind avoids what transforms you because the unknown represents effort and change. When you're about to break a pattern, negotiation becomes more intense. It offers you more believable, softer, more rational excuses, not to destroy you, but to protect you from discomfort. But that discomfort is the price of growth. If you only advance when you feel comfortable, you'll never truly advance. It's also important you learn to create small internal rules that are not discussed. Simple, clear, closed rules. Rules your mind understands as permanent, not as suggestions. It can be something as small as getting up when the alarm sounds, dedicating 20 daily minutes to what you want to improve, or leaving the phone far away while you work. These rules don't seek to limit you. They seek to free you from that constant negotiation that wears down your mental energy. Another key element is recognizing the difference between listening to yourself and obeying yourself. Listening to yourself is necessary. It allows you to understand how you feel, what you need, what makes you uncomfortable. But obey yourself always can be an error. Not all your emotions deserve an immediate response, and not all your thoughts should become actions. Daily improvement consists of learning to listen to your mind with compassion, but act from your commitment, not from your impulse. And you must also understand something profound. When you break internal negotiation, you build self-respect. Each time you sustain yourself, your identity strengthens. Each time you fulfill what you said you'd do, your self-esteem aligns with your action. Each time you choose to advance, although your mind asks you to retreat, you're sending a clear message. I can trust myself. That internal confidence is the root of all improvement. The last step is eliminating the illusion you have unlimited time. When you believe there will always be another opportunity, negotiation becomes eternal. But when you understand each day counts, that each decision weighs, that each action brings you closer or takes you further, you start to act with another energy, with intention, with seriousness, with consciousness. Improvement stops being a desire and becomes a path. Improving each day is not a grandiose act. It's the sum of small decisions where you decide not to negotiate with yourself. That's where your strength is born. That's where you change. That's where your life starts to take the course you've always wanted to build. Chapter 5. You improve when you learn to act even on days when you have no energy. There are days when you simply can't anymore. Not because life is unfair, but because you're exhausted inside. Days when the mind feels heavy, the body without strength, and emotions seem to drain you without explanation. It's in those moments where improving becomes especially difficult because your energy doesn't accompany your good intentions, and a part of you starts to ask if you really have what's necessary to sustain the process. But what almost nobody understands is lack of energy is not always lack of capacity. Many times it's lack of direction. You tire not only from what you do, but from what you carry mentally. It wears you down to postpone decisions. Sustain doubts, carry guilt, live in uncertainty. The mind exhausts more from what it thinks than from what it does. And when you reach those days of profound tiredness, improvement appears an unreachable luxury. Here is where you must learn something crucial. Improving is not a spectacular act. It's a minimal act. On easy days, advancing is simple. On difficult days, advancing is essential. Real progress is not defined by what you do when you're motivated, but by what you choose to do when you're tired. And that's the point where many people stop. They confuse tiredness with incapacity, when tiredness is only a state, not a condemnation. One of the most common errors is believing you need large doses of energy to improve. But improving each day doesn't require extraordinary force. It requires small and firm decisions. Sometimes improving means getting up 5 minutes earlier. Sometimes it means ordering a single space. Sometimes it means fulfilling a minimal task that avoids tomorrow you retreat. When you're exhausted, constancy is worth more than intensity. The version of you that improves is not born on perfect days. It's born on days when you do the minimum necessary to not break momentum. Another key point is understanding energy is recovered with clarity, not with evasion. Many times when you feel tired, you seek to distract yourself, flee, disconnect, turn off the mind, but those actions only give you momentary relief. After tiredness returns stronger because the root hasn't changed. Clarity, instead, returns strength to you. Knowing what you have to do, knowing why you do it, and knowing what you want to avoid saves you invaluable wear. The mind exhausts more from what you avoid than from what you face. You must also learn to listen to your body without abandoning your commitment. It's not about ignoring your limits, but about acting intelligently. There are days when you need to rest, yes, but resting is not giving up. Resting is preparing yourself. The difference between rest and abandonment is in intention. When you rest to continue, your rest is discipline. When you rest to avoid, your rest is self-sabotage. Your mind knows the difference, although you don't always want to admit it. Another fundamental aspect is the way you interpret your tiredness. If you see it as a signal you can't, you stop. If you see it as a natural part of the process, you continue. Improving each day implies changing internal narrative. Instead of saying, "I'm tired, I can't," you must say, "I'm tired, but I advance." Or even, "I'm tired, but today I'll give a small step." That psychological difference completely changes your capacity to sustain habits, decisions, and objectives. And something deeper, many of your moments of tiredness don't come from effort, but from living far from the person you want to be. Nothing wears down more than betraying yourself. Each time you avoid something important, you drain yourself. Each time you postpone what you know you must do, you drain yourself. Each time you abandon yourself for comfort, you drain yourself. The heaviest tiredness is that which is born from incongruence. Energy is recovered when you start to align your actions with your values. The last point is understanding, improving, even without energy, builds an indestructible identity. When you advance tired, you demonstrate to yourself you don't depend on emotional state of the moment, that you can sustain yourself even in difficulty, that your commitment is stronger than your exhaustion. That type of advance, small and constant, generates an internal confidence no person or circumstance can take from you. Daily improvement doesn't consist of feeling good all the time. It consists of keeping yourself in movement, even when you don't feel good, because it's precisely on those days, on days when your mind is heavy and your body slow, when it's defined who you're becoming. Chapter 6. You start to improve when you order your life from inside out. There are stages when you feel you do everything possible to improve, but still your life feels disordered. You don't know whether to advance, stop, change course, or start over. Decisions become heavier, tasks longer, and days more chaotic. And although you make effort, It seems as if progress escapes from your hands. This disorder is not only born from what you do, it's born from how your mind is configured inside. The truth is you cannot improve each day if your life is built on emotionally and mentally disorganized terrain. A chaotic space distracts you. An agenda without structure exhausts you. A saturated mind paralyzes you. Disorder is not only visual, it's psychological. When you don't have internal clarity, any attempt at progress feels forced, and no matter how much you do, you keep feeling nothing changes. What few people understand is order is not an act of aesthetics. It's an act of power. Ordering is not arranging things. It's recovering control. Each object out of place, each unresolved pending item, each postponed decision are small loads that accumulate inside you. And although you don't notice it, each of those loads consumes mental energy you need to grow. That's why, when you start to order your life, the first change you feel is not visual, it's emotional. The first step is stopping trying to organize everything all at once. That expectation paralyzes you. Real order is built in small parts, a space, a habit, a decision. When you try to do everything, you fail. When you choose a concrete point, you advance. And that advance, however minimal it seems, creates an internal sensation of direction. It's as if your mind said, I'm no longer surviving. I'm recovering my place. Another key point is external disorder reflects internal disorder. Sometimes your house is full of things that no longer represent who you are. Sometimes your agenda is occupied with activities that no longer contribute to you. Sometimes you sustain routines that no longer make sense for the life you want to build. Ordering requires courage because it implies recognizing what no longer fits with you. It implies letting go. It implies closing cycles. It implies accepting many parts of your life need to be updated. Clarity appears when you decide to eliminate what subtracts from you. You don't need more space. You need less noise. You don't need more time. You need less dispersion. You don't need more force. You need less load. The mind breathes when life simplifies, and when it breathes, it can focus, and when it focuses, it improves. But ordering is not only cleaning or arranging. It also means putting your priorities in their place. Many times you say you want to improve, but your day is full of actions that don't take you to it. You want to advance, but your habits push you backward. You want to be disciplined, but your routine is designed to distract you. Internal order implies asking yourself with honesty, am I living according to my priorities or according to my impulses? An ordered life doesn't mean a rigid life. It means a life with intention. When you organize your days with clarity, what you must do, what you can do, and what you don't need to do, you recover time, energy, and focus. And each of those things brings you closer to the version of you that improves without effort, because it no longer fights against confusion, but advances with direction. Another profound aspect of order is learning to close what you start. Each incomplete thing you leave open creates a small leak of mental energy. The mind doesn't distinguish between something big and something small. It only registers you left something unfinished. And when you have too many open matters, you start to feel saturated without knowing why. Completing the small reinforces your capacity to sustain the large. Finally, ordering your life is a way of telling yourself you take yourself seriously, that your goals matter, that your well-being matters, that your days deserve structure, that your mind deserves clarity. When you order, you send yourself an internal message. I'm ready to advance. And that message changes your behavior, your energy, and your identity. Improving each day doesn't begin with great efforts, but with a humble and powerful act of putting your life in order. Because when your environment aligns with your intention, progress stops feeling heavy and starts feeling natural. Chapter 7. You start to improve when you stop living reacting and start living choosing. There are moments when you feel your life moves too fast, as if you don't have control of your own day. You wake up and you're already reacting to messages, to pending items, to expectations, to problems you didn't seek, but that equally absorb you. And although you do everything possible to keep yourself afloat, you end the day with the sensation you didn't do anything that really matters. It's not lack of effort. It's lack of direction. You're living in reaction mode, not in choice mode. What almost nobody tells you is constantly reacting steals the energy necessary to improve. Living putting out fires drains you, disperses you, disconnects you from your priorities. When you react, you don't choose, and when you don't choose, you don't advance. Daily improvement becomes impossible when your life is full of others' urgencies and scarce of own decisions. You're not tired from doing much. You're tired from doing what you didn't choose. True transformation begins when you recover your capacity to choose. Choose how to start the day. Choose what deserves your attention. Choose what to ignore. Choose what to postpone. Choose what to sustain. Choose how to respond instead of reacting automatically is not easy because your mind is programmed to respond to the strongest stimulus, not to the deepest intention. But mental discipline is built precisely there in learning to pause before acting. The first step is realizing each automatic reaction is a lost opportunity. Each time you answer without thinking, decide without evaluating, or accept without reflecting, you're allowing the world to decide for you, and that habit takes you away from the life you want to build. Improvement requires consciousness. You cannot change what you do without understanding why you do it. And to understand, you need to break the speed of your mind. One of the most powerful practices is learning to create micro-pauses. 1 second before speaking, 2 seconds before responding, an instant before clicking, a breath before saying yes. That minimal pause changes everything. It gives you space to think, to observe your emotion, to remember your intention. People who improve each day don't act faster than others. They act more consciously. They don't respond from impulse. They respond from their criterion. Another essential point is reevaluating your automatic yes. Many of your retreats don't come from big, wrong decisions, but from commitments you accepted without analyzing. You say yes to tasks that don't contribute to you, to responsibilities that don't correspond to you, to favors that weigh you down, to activities that only fill your days without giving you meaning. Learning to say no respectfully, but firmly is one of the most profound skills of daily improvement. Each no you give to what subtracts from you is a silent yes to the life you want. You also need to learn to differentiate between urgent and important. Urgent shouts, important whispers. Urgent demands your immediate attention. Important sustains your progress. Most live trapped in urgent, but those who improve protect important. When you allow urgent to occupy your entire day, you end up empty. When you prioritize important, you end up built. Another key element is stopping reacting emotionally. Not everything you feel deserves to become an action. Not all anger deserves a response. Not all anxiety deserves a change of course. Not all doubt deserves to stop the process. Learning to coexist with your emotions without obeying them is a form of maturity that opens internal doors you perhaps never imagined. Your emotion cannot decide for you. It can inform, but not command. Life changes when you start to act from your center, not from your stimulus. When you decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't, when you learn to respond with intention instead of reacting by reflex, when your day is organized around your priorities and not around the world's interruptions. Improving each day is not doing more, it's choosing better. It's deciding from calm, from clarity, from the identity you're building. Because when you stop reacting and start choosing, you recover your time, your focus, and your internal power. And there's where improvement becomes inevitable. Chapter 8. You improve when you start to build the identity of the person you want to be. There are days when you ask yourself why. Although you make efforts to improve, you return to fall into the same habits, into the same impulses, into the same decisions that stop you. You try to change your behavior, but something inside you drags you back to the starting point. It's not lack of discipline. It's lack of identity. You keep acting like the person you were, not like the person you want to become. The truth is simple and profound. You cannot improve sustainably if your identity doesn't change. Your actions are born from who you believe you are. If in your mind you continue being someone impulsive, you'll act by impulse. If you believe you're someone inconstant, you'll fail. If you believe you're not capable, you'll sabotage yourself. Identity is the root of your behavior. Trying to change your life without changing your identity is like trying to make a tree give a different fruit without touching the seed. The first step is understanding identity is not a description. It's a decision. It's not something you discover. It's something you build. The person you want to be is not hidden inside you waiting to be found. It's waiting to be created through your daily actions. Each time you act differently, Even in something small, you're sending a message to your mind. This is a new version of me. But here's the obstacle. Your current identity has been forming for years. It's been molded by your fears, your experiences, your errors, your decisions, your insecurities. And that version of you, although you don't like it, is recognizable and familiar. Your mind prefers that to the unknown. That's why, each time you try to improve, an internal resistance appears. Not because you can't change, but because you're breaking an identity your mind used as reference to stability. One of the most frequent errors is trying to change everything at once. You want to be disciplined, healthy, productive, organized, emotionally stable, all at the same time. But identity doesn't change like that. Identity transforms when you choose a key behavior and sustain it. When you repeat an action, sufficient time for your mind to say, "This is not something I'm trying, this is something I am." Another essential point is identity is built faster when you speak to yourself as the person you want to be. Don't say, "I'm trying to be disciplined." Say, "I'm someone disciplined who is still learning to express it." Don't say, "I want to improve." Say, "I'm someone who improves every day." This is not self-deception. It's programming. Your mind acts based on the story you tell yourself. If you change the story, you change behavior. You also need to stop using your past as reference. What you did before doesn't define what you can do now. You're not your errors, nor your failures, nor your past versions. But while you keep reminding yourself who you were, it will cost you to be who you want to be. The old identity sustains because you revive it every day. Release it. It doesn't serve you. It doesn't build you. It doesn't correspond to the life you're trying to create. Another profound element is learning to celebrate small proofs of identity. When you do something that corresponds to your new version, even if something minimal, recognize that act. It's a brick in your internal construction. You don't need big changes, you need consistency. Each coherent decision strengthens your new identity, and each excuse returns to strengthen the previous one. You decide which version you feed, and finally you need to understand improving is not transforming yourself from one day to the next. It's becoming someone who no longer acts from improvisation, but from intention. Someone who doesn't wait to be perfect to start. Someone who chooses to behave like the person they want to be, even before that identity is completely formed. Because identity is not confirmed with desire, it's confirmed with action. Improving each day is in essence a process of personal reconstruction. It's not about changing your life. It's about changing the person who lives that life. And when your identity and your actions start to align, progress stops feeling forced and starts feeling inevitable. Chapter 9. You improve when you stop seeking immediate results and learn to sustain processes. There's a point in your life when you realize impatience has stolen more progress from you than any real obstacle. You know what you want, you begin well, you give the first steps, but not seeing quick results, you get discouraged, you start to doubt, you start to compare yourself, you start to question if it's worth it, and without realizing you abandon not because it's difficult, but because it wasn't immediate. The truth is this: improving each day is not an act of speed. It's an act of continuity. But the modern mind is conditioned to want everything fast, easy, and visible. We live surrounded by stimuli that promise instant changes, immediate results, miraculous transformations. And when your progress doesn't look like that, you believe you're failing. You're not failing. You're confusing growth with immediacy. Impatience distorts your perception. It makes you believe your effort doesn't serve when it does serve. It makes you believe you don't advance when you do advance. It makes you believe you should already be further when you're exactly where you need to be to learn what you need to learn. The problem is not your progress. It's your expectation of how it should look. One of the most common errors is believing improving each day means seeing changes every day. It doesn't work like that. Most profound improvements are invisible at first. They're felt but not seen. They accumulate but don't show. Discipline, mental clarity, self-control, identity. All these transformations are internal before being external, and most abandoned just before the moment they were going to start noticing results. What almost nobody teaches you is real progress is cumulative. A day seems insignificant. An action seems small. A change seems irrelevant. But when you sustain those small actions for weeks or months, the sum becomes gigantic. Constancy converts the small into powerful. Impatience converts the powerful into nothing. Another essential point is learning to recognize internal progress. Although you don't see visible results, there are signs you're improving. You control yourself more, you react less, you think with more clarity, you decide with more intention, you recover faster from your errors. That type of progress is not measured in achieved goals, but in the person you're forming. And that formation requires time, repetition, and patience. You must also observe how impatience feeds self-sabotage. When you don't see results, you seek relief, you abandon habits, you break routines, you return to behaviors that subtract from you, not because they don't work, but because they didn't give you the immediate gratification you expected. But improving each day means learning to live without that instant gratification. It means trusting a process you can't yet see. Another crucial element is changing your focus from result to direction. When you obsess with result, each small stumble seems a defeat. But when you focus on direction, you understand as long as you keep moving toward your better version, you're advancing, no matter how slow, no matter how imperfect. What matters is you no longer betray yourself abandoning what you know you must sustain. And here's a profound truth. Patience is not passivity. Patience is emotional discipline. It's the capacity to sustain effort when your mind asks you to renounce. It's keeping yourself firm when your emotions fluctuate. It's trusting your path, even when you don't yet see results. Patience doesn't mean waiting without acting. It means acting without despairing. The last step is understanding processes build you more than results. A result is reached once. A process accompanies you all life. Being the person who sustains habits, decisions, and efforts, even on days without motivation. That's the true transformation. That's the difference between someone who improves and someone who only dreams of improving. Improving each day is not about how much you change, but about how much you sustain. When you stop seeking the immediate and commit to the process, your progress becomes inevitable. And most importantly, you become someone who no longer abandons at first difficulty because you've understood everything worth it takes time. Chapter 10. You improve when you learn to handle your emotions without letting them decide for you. There are days when you feel you understand exactly what you must do to improve, but still you don't do it. Not because you can't, but because your emotions take control. A moment of anxiety breaks you. An impulse distracts you. A bit of frustration makes you abandon. A wave of sadness disconnects you from your goals. And although you know what you want, your emotion seems stronger than your decision. Most people believe they need to control their emotions to advance. But emotions are not controlled. They're managed. You cannot prevent them from appearing, but you can decide what you do when they appear. True emotional discipline doesn't consist of feeling less, but of acting with more consciousness. Not in being cold, but in being stable. Not in eliminating your emotions, but in preventing them from making decisions for you. The emotional mind functions with speed. It seeks immediate relief, not long-term progress. It whispers to you, rest when in reality you need to continue. It tells you later, when now is the moment. It tells you I can't when you can. And if you're not attentive, your life starts to build from momentary impulses, not from the identity you want to consolidate. The first thing you must understand is emotions are not instructions. They're signals. They signal what makes you uncomfortable, what scares you, what matters to you, what you need to work on. But that an emotion feels strong doesn't mean you must obey it. Millions of people abandon their processes because they confuse emotional intensity with truth. And an intense emotion doesn't always tell the truth. It only tells what you feel in that instant. The key is creating distance between what you feel and what you decide. When an emotion invades you, don't act immediately. Observe, breathe, wait a few seconds. Those micropauses create an internal space where you can think before reacting. Improvement begins when your decisions are born from your clarity, not from your emotional turbulence. Another crucial point is learning to name what you feel. When you say, "I'm bad," your mind gets lost. But when you say, "I'm frustrated because I'm not advancing as I expected," your emotion orders itself. When you say, "I feel anxious because I'm leaving my comfort zone," the emotion becomes understandable. Emotional clarity reduces emotional intensity. Naming what you feel returns control to you. You must also learn to differentiate between passing emotions and profound emotions. Most sabotages come from passing emotions, tiredness of the moment, punctual irritation, temporary insecurity. But when you let those emotions decide for you, you're allowing a bad minute to ruin a good process. Improving each day implies learning to continue forward, even when emotionally you don't feel in your best version. Another common error is avoiding uncomfortable emotions. Avoiding sadness, discomfort, vulnerability, or uncertainty gives you temporary relief, but long-term keeps you trapped in the same patterns. Emotions you avoid become stronger. Emotions you face weaken. Emotional improvement implies allowing yourself to feel what you feel without punishing yourself for it. And there's an even more profound aspect. Your emotions reorder when your actions order. You don't need to wait to feel good to start improving. Many times feeling better is a consequence of acting and not the condition to act. When you do what corresponds to you, even without desire, your emotions begin to align with your new identity. Action creates emotional stability. Stagnation creates emotional chaos. Finally, you must understand being owner of your decisions means accepting you cannot have absolute control of your emotions, but you can have control of your response. That's what builds you. That's what strengthens you. That's what allows you to improve each day without becoming slave of what you feel. Improving doesn't consist of feeling good every day. It consists of not abandoning your path when you don't feel good. It consists of acting with coherence, even when emotion pushes you toward the opposite. It consists of remembering your emotions pass, but your decisions remain. The person who improves each day is not the one who feels less. It's the one who chooses better. Chapter 11. You truly improve when you understand small decisions build you or destroy you without you noticing. Sometimes you think improving each day depends on big decisions. You believe you need a drastic change, a moment of total clarity, or an extraordinary motivation to transform your life. But true change is not born from the big. It's born from the small, from those instants that seem insignificant, but that, repeated over and over, mold your identity without you noticing. Most people underestimate the power of minimal decisions. They believe saying today doesn't matter, just this once, tomorrow I'll start, has no consequences. But those micro decisions create a pattern, and that pattern creates an identity. You don't fail from a big error. You fail from a silent accumulation of small renunciations. You don't improve from a big effort. You improve from a constant repetition of many steps most are not willing to sustain. Small decisions have something that makes them dangerous. They're easy to justify. Nobody feels guilt for going to bed a little later, for postponing a daily habit, for getting distracted a few more minutes, for leaving something for another occasion. But each of those decisions reprograms your mind, teaches that your objectives can wait, that your priorities are flexible, that your commitments are negotiable. That internal erosion is imperceptible at first, but devastating over time. What almost nobody explains is identity is built through frequency, not through intensity. An intense action done once doesn't change your life. A small action done every day does change it. Your brain learns by repetition. It learns what you do constantly, not what you do spectacularly. If you repeat decisions that bring you closer to your goal, even if they seem insignificant, your identity strengthens. If you repeat decisions that distance you, your confidence weakens. The first step to improve through the small is observing your daily choices, not from guilt, but from consciousness. What do you do when nobody sees you? What do you choose when you're tired? What do you maintain when your motivation disappears? Daily improvement is built in those private moments, where you decide between continuing forward or giving up a little. Each choice is an internal vote for the person you want or for the person you were. Another essential point is learning to close open decisions. Each task you leave halfway, each habit you postpone, each conversation you avoid, creates an invisible weight in your mind. That weight is called cognitive load. And the more load you accumulate, the less energy you have to improve. Completing the small frees mental space for the large. Finishing what you start strengthens your word. Maintaining what you decide builds your character. None of this is spectacular, but all is transformative. You must also understand small decisions create rhythm, an internal rhythm that sustains your advance and avoids your life becoming a cycle of effort and abandonment. When your decisions are coherent, your mind acquires a sense of continuity. You're no longer trying to improve. You're living as someone who improves. And that difference, although subtle, changes everything. It gives you stability. It gives you structure. It gives you a sense of direction that no longer depends on how you feel each day. Another profound aspect is small decisions protect you from self-sabotage. Most retreats don't come from a big error, but from a small renunciation that becomes 2, then 3, and in short time destroys your advance. But when you maintain small decisions, even on your difficult days, you create an emotional barrier against relapse. You become someone who doesn't break easily, someone capable of sustaining themselves even under pressure. And there's an even more important point. Each small decision sends a message to your mind about your self-worth. When you choose what builds you, you're saying, I respect myself enough to sustain myself. When you choose what destroys you, although small, you're saying, my momentary comfort is worth more than my future. And that message profoundly affects your self-esteem. Small decisions don't only mold your behavior, they mold your self-perception. Real change begins when you start making small decisions that align with the person you say you want to be, and you'll reach a point where those decisions will no longer feel like effort, but like a natural extension of your identity. That's the true power of daily improvement, converting the small into inevitable, the discipline into automatic, the correct into normal. Improving is not a heroic act. It's a repetitive act, and paradoxically, it's in the small where you build the large. Because small decisions are what define you when nobody observes you, when nobody congratulates you, when nobody demands from you. That's where you're formed. That's where you transform. That's where you truly start to improve each day. Chapter 12. You truly improve when you convert discipline into a form of taking care of yourself. You reach a moment in the process when you realize something that completely changes your relationship with improvement. Discipline is not a punishment. It's a form of self-care. For a long time, you thought discipline was pressure, rigidity, demand. But when you start to improve each day, you discover discipline is in reality an act of self-love. It's the decision not to abandon yourself, not to let yourself fall, to sustain yourself even when nobody else can do it for you. The problem is many people see discipline as an external obligation, like something they must fulfill to achieve a result. But true discipline is not born from fear of failing or desire to demonstrate something. It's born from profound recognition. You are responsible for your well-being, for your future, and for the quality of your life. When you understand that discipline stops feeling heavy and starts feeling necessary, discipline is a structure that sustains you when your emotions fluctuate. It's the bridge that keeps you advancing when your energy lowers. It's the internal signal you take your objectives seriously. And most importantly, it's the silent reminder you can trust yourself. When you're disciplined, you don't depend on impulses or inspiration or perfect moments. You depend on your commitment. And that gives you a strength few people manage to develop. One of the most common errors is believing discipline must be perfect, that you must fulfill your habits every day without failing, without tiring, without making mistakes. But real discipline is flexible. It doesn't mean you never fall. It means you never stay fallen. It means, although you fail, you retake the path. That a bad day doesn't define your process. That a stumble doesn't destroy your advance. Discipline is resilience, not perfection. Another essential point is understanding discipline is not a sacrifice. It's an investment. Each time you choose what builds you, you're investing in the person you want to be. Each time you choose a positive habit, instead of a momentary gratification, you're investing in your future. Each time you choose to fulfill a promise you made yourself, you're investing in your self-esteem, and those investments accumulated over time change your entire life. Discipline also frees you. Yes, it frees. It removes the weight of improvising all the time. It removes the stress of not knowing what to do. It removes the anxiety of feeling you're lost. It gives you direction, rhythm, clarity. Many people think discipline limits their freedom when in reality it creates it, because there's no greater freedom than having a life that doesn't collapse from a bad day, an intense emotion, or a passing temptation. There's something even deeper. Discipline redefines your relationship with yourself. When you fulfill what you say you'll do, you start to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, your decisions change, your limits change, your expectations change, your relationships change. Improving each day stops being an effort and becomes a natural expression of who you're becoming. You start to act from a stronger, more stable, and more conscious identity. Another key element is discipline protects what you build. Without it, what's gained is lost quickly. You can advance for weeks and retreat in hours if you don't have a structure that sustains your habits. Discipline not only helps you improve, it helps you maintain yourself better. It's the balance between building and preserving, between advancing and sustaining. And finally, you understand discipline is a profound form of respect toward your life. Nobody will come to order it for you. Nobody can make decisions for you. Nobody can walk this process for you. If you don't choose yourself, nobody can do it. Each disciplined act is a way of telling yourself, I deserve this. I deserve to grow. I deserve to improve. That internal recognition is the true motor of transformation. Improving each day is not only doing different things, it's treating yourself differently. It's taking care of yourself with actions and not with desires. It's building a life where your decisions reflect your value and not your fear. And when you understand discipline is the most honest form of taking care of yourself, the process stops feeling obligated and starts feeling yours.